All right, we're going to call this finance meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're going to adopt the agenda as is, but if we're not ready for item number 6, we will skip to item number 7. Motion to adopt the agenda, moved by Commissioner Kraft, supported by Commissioner Romano. Please vote. Motion passes. Approval of minutes dated October 3rd, 2018. Is there a motion? Moved by Brown, supported by Romano. Please vote. All right, motion passes. Public participation. Does anyone wish to be heard? Anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. Should we go 7?
Yeah, do 7.
Okay. All right, we're going to just skip to 7 for now because we're waiting on somebody. Department recommendations, 2018 apportionment report. We'll call up Director of Finance, Steve Smeagol.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. On your agenda today, I think on page 10 possibly, is the apportionment report, which is an annual compilation of all the millage rates from all the various communities and the taxable values from all the various communities. That information is provided to us in terms of the millage rates by all the local units. The properties are equalized and valued by our equalization department under the direction of Kristen Seeloff. This is an annual compilation. It's more of a procedural matter to adopt this report. I guess I would point out, as we've spoken in the past, on page 18, I guess, of your agenda, it's the page of the apportionment report that has 2 pie graphs on it. So the taxable value of the property in the county for 2018 is a little over $27.1 billion, and that's an increase of about 4.2%. We've talked about that before, and so what you'll see in a couple of weeks is one adjustment, at least we'll be bringing to you, will be a revenue adjustment to increase the property tax revenue for 2018 because we budgeted a 2% increase. It's 4.2, but then we have a Headley rollback, so that at the end of the day, it's going to be about a 3.5% increase overall. So I'd like to keep my comments kind of brief to this. It's more procedural than anything.
Let me get a receive and file first. Is this approve or, I'm sorry. This is approved.
Yeah,
Sorry about that. Motion
approve
to approve by Gillette, supported by Carabelli. I do not see any speakers. So please vote. Oh, I'm on the wrong, sorry. Motion passes 12-0. All right, we're going to go down to budget reviews. Human Resources and Labor Relations, Director Andrew McKinnon, and
I'll do my
Director Steve
brief
Smeagol.
introductory comments as normal. Page 28 of your budget, you'll see that the budget for Human Resources is about $2.2 million. You'll see that there's an increase of one position in 2019. I want to explain that a little bit. For a few years now, we've had two part-time folks, one full-time equivalent. Downstairs, you might know them as Terry and Kathy. They're the switchboard folks that sit down in the lobby or the main entrance area of Human Resources. Those folks have been paid out of the telecommunications fund for a number of years. And so what we're doing is we're just transferring the payroll for those folks into Human Resources from the telecommunications fund. You'll also notice that there's an increase in reimbursement revenue of about $38,000. That's to pay for those folks. It's more of an accounting change or a budgetary change than anything else. We're not adding a new body to the county. So I just want to make that very clear that Andy's, we're not adding additional positions to HR. very, small, operating budget. We didn't make very many changes there, so, I guess that completes my comments. If you have any questions financially, I can answer them.
Well, excuse me, let me get a motion to receive and file. Moved by Lucido, supported by Carabelli. And would you like to speak first, or do you want me to go ahead and call on the people that have questions?
I'm wide open, Commissioner Kleinfeld.
All right, I'll go ahead and call Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for Steve.
Yeah,
Steve, I went through, and you need to help me here. I'm going back historically, and I'm going back to the elimination of the Department of Roads, the 3 commissioners to the responsibility of the Executive's Office to manage. And with that said, after that changed, for cost savings, I believe it was about $500,000 that we were going to save, and probably put close to $300,000 in additional road funds by eliminating the HR department, and I think it was finance, a bunch of other things over there. Did we ever eliminate the HR department over at roads?
we eliminated one position that I know of. I'll check with you. I think they only had 3 to begin with.
Okay,
So we did, but would be the equivalent of their HR director retired. We never replaced that position.
I agree, because my understanding is that that was going to be eliminated, and then the HR work was going to be done by our HR department.
Some of that has happened as well, but we did eliminate one position as far as I remember. I'll
Okay,
double check
I
and
would
make
ask
sure.
you to get back to the board and let us know, because I believe that was totally eliminated. I could be wrong.
Right.
And with that said, there was supposed to be a chargeback and of Act $51. So they get to recoup the savings of the money and put more money into roads and then pay for the services to the county, because it's different funds. And a revenue stream should have been in HR's fund, because they're doing the work. The actual work should be charged back to the Act $51. So as I'm looking through this, I see the $200,000 for the administration position and the 38 for the operators. How I look at the revenues, I get that, but I don't see that charge.
I think what's happening is the folks that are working on HR payroll are working physically here, but they're being paid through the roads payroll system. So they're not on the county's payroll system, they're on the roads payroll system.
Okay, if you can get back and let us know, because like I said, if I don't see that. in the-
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, I don't see it in the budget, and I thought I would see an income to
Yep, I understand what you're
HR.
saying.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, I don't have any more speakers on board. Oh, okay, now I do. Commissioner Majak?
Yeah, thank you. My question is not so much on the HR department, and Andy, you've done a great job since being HR director. I get the emails of all the programs and things that you're doing for county employees. Thank you very much for that. My question, first of all, for Steve, do we know how many positions are being how many positions to departments are being requested for next year?
For this year?
Yeah, for 19, please, yeah.
There's a total of 35 and a half.
Okay, so that's, in my opinion, that's a lot of requests. We have to look through and see what we're gonna do with those. My question is, I guess, to both of you guys, do you feel that is too high? I mean, I'm just very nervous because we're in a budget deficit going forward the next couple years.
Well, again.
And that makes me very nervous, and then when we're adding people, you know, that's a lot of money. I'm wondering if you guys can comment on that.
I would say to you, Commissioner, is that of the 35 position, you have 3 of those are being added at roads. We've also talked about adding 16 positions at the Sheriff's Department to reduce overtime, which, as we know, we won't see the full effect of for a full, 9 months, basically, so won't see the full effect until we get into 2020. We added 5 positions because we added a new judge. So there's 24 of the 35, just those 3 particular actions. The remaining positions had a total net cost to the general fund of about $160,000 or $170,000.
That's it.
Yeah, because a lot of it's being paid through either reductions in contract service costs, for example, at the health department, or they're coming through grant revenues or reimbursements or something along those lines.
And we're sure about, these are hard dollars, and you're certain
Yep.
of those numbers? Okay.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know the sheriff's department, it just seems that every year the sheriff's department has a lot of overtime. I know, Marv, you could attest to that. It just seems,
Well, that
no
was the
matter
idea
how
of
many
adding the
positions
yeah.
we've added or we've taken away through budget cuts over the years at every department, especially sheriff's department, that there's always overtime. So I'm very cautious about that. That's all I have to say, so thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Okay, I don't have any other speakers. We have a motion and support, correct? Oh, do you want to speak? No, well, yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I guess. You know, why not? I get the floor, right? This might be for you, Mr. McKinnon. I know we're in contract negotiations and stuff, and there was you're familiar with the study that came forward. I know we don't want to talk too much while we're in negotiations and stuff, but, the budget, and we're talking about what Commissioner Sauger will always say is that, we might not be paying our people enough to keep them here. And that's not just in the sheriff's department, that may be across the other departments as well. So, I hope, from our perspective, we want to save money as much as we can. That's our job as commissioners. But on the other hand, we want good quality employees. We want to keep them here. We want to keep them happy. We don't want to have a high turnover that just in the end ends up costing us more. So I guess it's not a question so much as a statement that you make sure you take that into account in the negotiations and going forward. If you have anything to say on that, let me know.
I do actually, Commissioner,
Okay.
and I appreciate that. If the commissioners would humor me here for just a couple of minutes, I had prepared a couple of little notes because you don't know me that well yet, and I hope that through this we can continue to get to know each other better. First, thank you. I was confirmed by this body. It's been a great first 3 months. I very much appreciate the confirmation and the opportunity to work here and serve this county. So thank you all for that. Behind me, we have Brian Jacks, who is a service director for our B team, and Carlin Semlo, who's a service director for our A team. That's not like team number 1 and team number 2. It's just we have to identify them somehow. So we have an A team and a B team. Also, thank you to Steve for all the support. As you can tell, as he's talking, we've worked very, very closely together. There's a lot to be said about paying people fairly, for sure. And our benefit package here in the county is up for some debate, but it's pretty strong, especially our health care package is pretty strong. So that's one thing that we do have that can attract folks, because our staff still is not paying anything over the hard cap through the hard work of Mr. Smeagol, his department, and the people who came before me. That's a pretty exceptional benefit, and I think it's great for our staff. There's also a lot of studies out there that increases in pay are great short term, but that the working environment, the culture, the climate is really a strong driver of retaining people. So it doesn't replace pay for sure, but it's something that we can affect and something that we will continue to work on. I believe it was Commissioner Majak that said, the programs that we offer, many times those are coming to us from other departments in the county. And because of that, we share them and maybe we get some credit for that. But really, we've got a lot of great people in this county trying to do a lot of good things for their staff. And we'll continue to push that, try to train for that. That's something we can do with relatively minimal cost. As far as the classification and compensation study goes, we've spent a great deal of money on that. We continue to move in that direction because we want to honor those dollars that we already spent. So we will continue to push in that direction. It benefits about 2/3 of our staff, maybe a little bit more. And, like you said, I don't want to get too into it, but we'll continue to move in that direction. And mostly just, again, thank you to you guys for confirming me. Thank you to the support that I have here. And it's just been a pleasure the first 3 months. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Smith.
Thank you. Andy, how are you?
I'm doing
Thanks
great,
for being
thanks.
here. Good. Two things. One, to your environment of, wanting to stay without the pay. I think that's something we've talked about, and we know a lot of the big companies, Google and all of those higher-end, newer companies have found that those type of incentives do really almost outweigh the pay. One of the things that I know a few of us have discussed for years and years and years, and it's, depends on where you're at in your life on if it's a priority, but we always have young workers that have kids, and I just think that having a daycare type of situation in the county that would be very affordable for workers, yet we could cover costs by, by charging a little would be one benefit that I don't think you could really get anywhere else, and it would really be a benefit to especially a lot of the young workers here. So I just wanted to bring that out in public. I know we've talked about it. A bunch of us have talked about it, several times. 8 years ago, I wouldn't even have thought about it, right? I mean, all of a sudden now I'm in that situation where, wow, I mean, it's really trouble. It's troubling when you have young kids trying to figure out how to get to work when they're, when you have a day off or they have a day off, especially what you're going to do with them. So I just wanted to put that out there that I think you might find, support around here for looking into something like that.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, and we've certainly discussed it. I've discussed it with my staff. It'll be something that continues to be on our radar as we move forward.
And number two, since we haven't really been briefed on the entirety of the compensation study, I just want to make sure, as we're talking here, that this budget that's presented to us was presented to us with the anticipation of possibly some of that being implemented next year. So when we talk about 1% or 2% or whatever, I don't need to know the details, but I just want to make sure that we're looking at a budget that takes this study into account and the possibilities that may come from it.
I know that Steve and I have looked at that. I'm just looking to him for guidance on that.
Yeah.
We have not included anything in this budget for the compensation study.
Right.
So it includes the 1%,
Well, sure.
and it includes the 1% for 20 and 21 and all these other years.
But so then, Andy, I guess I would ask you, and I know that, you're newer, right? And this is, a study that was out, that we did last year. When do you see the effects of this really taking place? I understand that a lot of it has to do with, negotiations and labor, contracts and such. But, I mean, have you guys looked at when you start seeing some of this hit and, the actual potential economic effect it might have year to year?
Yeah, we've looked very closely at that, Mr. Smeagol and myself, with how it hits, where it hits, how we might see some savings over time with some of those positions that are studied and seem to be above market currently. And, there's always a million moving parts of the budget, as you all know better than I do, being here on the board longer than I've been employed here. There's a million moving parts. I think Mr. Smeagol just talked about we've had a 4.2% increase in taxable value. But then there's a heavy rollback, so we really see 3.5, but then we budgeted for 2.5. And I know we're always trying to budget conservative. So that's something that's always a moving target, but we've been keeping a close look at it as we're looking at different groups that might jump into the class and comp study.
Okay. Maybe we'll have a little more talk with this offline.
Sure.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Drollet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to follow up on the Chair's comments, I'm curious, and I'm not addressing this to you, but is there anybody who has an idea when we're going to get briefed on the compensation study? It seems like it's been in for a long time. Is that something we should schedule, or who should be briefing us, or can we pay for that? It'd be nice to know what it said.
Right. We have asked. I can't tell you. We don't have anything scheduled. We have asked, and it's basically the executive's office allowing his department head to give us that briefing in totality. We've had our briefing on our area of it, but
Okay.
not on the county and as a whole. But here we are, we're gonna be approving a budget, and we know that a lot of the money that goes out in a budget goes into salaries, yet we really don't have a good working knowledge on where this compensation study is gonna lead us. So the question is
Something
well
that sort of
thought.
just faded a little bit from our at least my immediate memory. So maybe it's something we could add to our list of topics that we discuss with the executive at an upcoming meeting, because it'd sure be nice to get that information that we paid for on the compensation study, know what it says. So that's one point. Second point is, for you, sir, thanks again for your presentation. And I've listened carefully to what Commissioner Leonetti and others have said, but I'm curious how you mentioned that our benefit package is relatively favorable. And that's an incentive for some folks to stay longer in their employment with the county. Is there a comparison that's been done between our average benefit package? I know it differs a little bit by bargaining unit and so forth, but our average benefit package with that of the average full-time private sector employee in Macomb County's benefit package?
There hasn't been a study commissioned on that. In the class and compensation study, they do have a comment in there that they surveyed it, they looked at it, but not in real depth, and that our benefits are more rich than probably most all private sector employers and many public sector employees.
Is there a relatively painless way of getting a comparison of how much more rich? Whether it's the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics monitors that data, a lot of that type of data. I'm not sure if they monitor that exactly, but if we had an idea of how our constituents' benefits look compared to how the county employees' benefit look, it'll give us an idea of sort of where we stand, at least in comparison to the private sector. I recognize they're likely more rich. It's just a question of how much more rich. And I think that's something I'd be very interested in. I don't know if that's something that could be easily put together, if that would be more in depth and require a lot of time.
Yeah, I think we might be requesting a couple of positions for that because of all the different machinations of our benefit structure at this point. Some people having pensions, some people not having pensions. Then we have the 401A for certain folks and that match. Then our different health insurance benefits and what's covered under this plan, what's covered under that plan. It could be very, very in depth to really get that dollar for dollar comparison. We might be able to get a more general understanding, but the dollar for dollar would be very in depth.
Okay, well, general understanding would be a good first step. So if we knew where the average 5-year county employee average, I know bargaining units differ, and then compared to an average 5-year employee in the private sector, and then a 10-year and a 20-year. If that's something that could be done, that'd be great, because it'd help us understand where our strengths are as an employer, where maybe our weaknesses might be as an employer. So if that's something that could be pulled together without, pulling staff off of things for weeks at a time, it'd be very helpful.
Thanks, Commissioner. We'll certainly look into it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. Glad your first quarters went pretty well for you.
I made the mistake of answering Mr. Leonetti's comment today. I should have
I
stopped
know,
right there.
man, we would have been good, we'd have been done already.
Well, that's right. So you've been here for 3 months. Did Steve give you a good budget overview of where we stand, not only for this budget year, but going in future years, and the downward pressure on our budget, to restrain spending and not to go backwards to the times where we had 30% more employees around here, and that we don't want to blow our budgets up by adding more employees and keeping our expenses in line. I mean, I hope you've got a full understanding of the pressures that are on this budget, not only for this year, but going forward, the future pressures.
If I wasn't wearing a suit, you'd see the bruises from Steve on me. So, yes, he has definitely informed me of where we are, where we're going, what the pressures are on the budget for sure.
You have to be the strong man in this, because you're the one that everyone's going to come to for wanting positions. You've got to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
And you may have a smiley face now, but you'll soon probably wear off it shortly, probably. But well, that's good. And not having it is interesting to note that this budget's not prepared with anything, no consideration to this big study we all paid for. It's going to be really put you at a disadvantage, I would think, because now you got a study out there that tells everyone that what they should be paid before you even walk into negotiations. Not really the way I would have done things. That's why I voted against it, among other reasons. So, good luck, and I'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Andy, how are you?
I'm doing great.
I just wanted to commend you. In your first couple months, I sort of peppered you right away with a constituent who wanted to work with you to try to get the county to have some tax credits for hiring veterans, and you jumped on it right away, and I want to thank you for that. And I think it was, it's a program where if we hire a veteran, we could save up to $9,800 per veteran or something like that. So I just wanted to thank you amidst, learning everything and getting your feet under you in the first couple months. You were willing to do that, to reach out to myself and the constituent and to work with him on this. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And that, in my mind, was a great indicator of things to come. So I just wanted to thank you for that and commend you for that.
I didn't get here early enough to talk to you about it. We haven't finalized it yet, but we are moving in that direction.
Perfect.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you for the heads up on it.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, there's a motion in support. Please vote.
Thanks, everybody, very much.
Thank you. Okay, the motion passes 12-0. We're going to very quickly dispense with 9 since we've already had these in front of us, and then we'll go back to 6. So, moved by, was that Brown? Oh, that was my Jack. Moved by their entirety. Support? Support by Toko. Questions? Please vote. Motion passes 12-0. So now we'll go back up to item 6, presentations, lobbyist legislative monitoring options, and I'm going to just hand it over to Chair Smith.
Thank you. We had discussion last week. I've had discussions with many of you over the last year about the possibilities of having our own lobbyist. Commissioner Carabelli and I had some conversations with Oakland County and some different counties that have their own lobbyists. We've had this discussion several times. A lot of you know kind of what set it off when we had our drain board positions legislatively wiped, one of them taken away from us without our knowledge on this, right? So it kind of made us think maybe what are we looking at? Should we have our own lobbyist? So we started talking to other communities. Oakland County, I'll introduce Mike Gingell and Dave Woodward. Mike Gingell's the chair of the Oakland County Board. Dave has also been on the board for, I don't know how long, but he'll tell us. And they have their own lobbyists. And last week I talked about doing a lobbyist for lame duck. I haven't signed that yet. I've decided that we should probably talk a little bit more about it. I know most of you were for it. A few of you were surprised by it, but I also wanted to be able to I asked these gentlemen to come and speak to us on the benefits, the upsides, the downfalls, how it was when they first got their own lobbyist. Just give us a little perspective on a government that's very similar to ours and what they do with the lobbyists, some of the benefits that they've seen from having them over the years. So this is really just kind of a short presentation on it. They're open for any type of questions on how they run their government, anything like that. So Mike and Dave, come on up to the microphone. And they both have a little presentation. I think basically what we looked at is I asked them, what do they use their lobbyists for? What have they used it? What are the benefits that they found out of having a lobbyist? How did it come across when you first decided that you wanted to, have your own lobbyist with your executive? What were the arguments? How does it work now after that? So, Mike, if you want.
Sure. Well, before
sorry,
we
go
open, let me go ahead and,
Get emotional.
hello. We know each other for a long time. Let me get a motion to receive and file, moved by Kraft, supported by Lucido. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Want me to kick it off? Okay, well, first of all, thank you for having us here, members of the board. It's an honor to be before you. I appreciate the opportunity. And I guess I'll just start out and say, we're certainly not an expert in Macomb County government, but we'll talk to you about Oakland. The concept of lobbyists or consultants in Oakland County isn't new. In fact, our county executive has a lobbyist, sheriff has a lobbyist, the Board of Commissioners has a lobbyist, and at one point in time, we had an additional lobbyist for economic development under a previous leader for our economic development group who's no longer there, and I believe that lobbyist has since left. But at the end of the day, from our perspective, the Board of Commissioners' perspective, we view ourselves as the legislative branch of Oakland County government. And in any good government has checks and balances. So in order to ensure we have checks and balances, we obtained many years ago through a committee of the board, a lobbyist or a consultant to represent our interests at the state level. So I can tell you that it was new, it was different, it was change. Anytime something new occurs, you got to work out the bumps, and there's perceptions and agendas and all that type of stuff sometimes that occur. Many of you know. But I would tell you that while there was some pessimism within the board and some pessimism within other branches of government, that worked through itself fairly quickly. And today, I think if you were to talk to members of our board or the administration or other entities, I think they would say that overall, the board having our own lobbyist in Lansing has actually been a good thing. And while there are times we may disagree with a different branch of government, a lot of times it's just ensuring that we're getting the proper information from Lansing and things that are likely to occur. So I thought it might be helpful just to say, here's some of the topics over the last year we've worked closely with our consultant or lobbyist on. And our board has a subcommittee, a legislative committee, that actually keeps abreast of issues in Lansing that could affect us and then instructs our lobbyists to look into matters for us. So things like revenue sharing, what's going to happen at the state level? Are we going to get our fair share? How does that impact our budget? Are the numbers that we're hearing from the administrative branch as they're preparing the budget kind of jiving with what we're hearing in Lansing directly? Creating a successful child care fund, reforming tax capture statutes, flea market legislation, somewhat little unique to Oakland. We needed some changes in the law for us to be able to operate a flea market, and we were able to utilize our lobbyists to get that done. Indigent Defense Commission, I'm sure you're all dealing with this one too, but from our perspective, there's been a lot of discussion around what's this going to cost us, right? Semi-unfunded mandate, we've heard numbers of 20 million, 50 million. It's going to require us to open a public defender's office. And so we've heard the gamut of what all that might be. And it's great. You know, we love to get that information from the administrative branch as we're building the budget, but we've been able to go directly to Lansing and legislators through our lobbyists and ask questions directly, kind of check up the boxes. Does this all sound right? Are we really getting all the information that we think we need? Raise the age, which is about the, you know, at what age can people be incarcerated? Can they go into the main jail versus not? A lot of expense to the county for that. Healthy Kids Dental, certainly one Dave was interested in. Personal property taxes. So it's kind of a myriad of issues that we generally get involved in. And I would say that we're not normally the body that's trying to push a change in the law. A lot of times the administration is doing that. But I would tell you that I think the administration would say at this point, when there's a major issue like the Indigent Defense Commission, we not only engage our lobbyists, but we pair them up with the county executive's lobbyists. So we use PAA, county executive use much more, or John Smalley, much more Smalley Harrington, I think it still is. And they'll work together because when you're lobbying, a lot of it's about relationships. Leon and others probably know this from there. It's about who has a relationship with certain legislators and can you corral all those relationships to get an action completed that is favorable to you. I mean, that's essentially what we're paying for. So I'll stop here and maybe turn it over to Dave. He can give you a different purview about our relationship with PAA, but I'm hoping that these comments were at least helpful as you're considering what you might want to do.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee, members of the board. Also great to be here. Great to see some old friends and many of you around the table here. I guess I'll just talk in broad concept when Commissioner Smith asked to come out here to talk about this. I'll be honest, I was one of the people that fought Mike and others on this.
That's normal in that situation.
That is right. That's what we do.
Yes.
We show up to work, punch in, and that's what we do. In all seriousness, I'm a former legislator. I've had my full share of interacting with lobbyists, looking at all the lobbyists in county government, because I think actually our drain commissioner retains a lobbyist on occasion. So, there were just a lot, can't we figure out a way to do this all together? Is it really worth it? Do we get the return on investment? Is there something unique that we need that we can't get through another way? So to be cost conscious on that. And I'll have to say, I did not support it initially. I have become a convert and a supporter of it for a few reasons. As a legislative branch at the state level, legislative branch in county government, I firmly believe the role, the policy-making role, the budgetary-making role, there are priorities and agenda items that rank at a different level that might even be shared with others, but might not rank at the same level of priority. And that matters. So when it comes into negotiating big complex systems like the Great Lakes Water Authority structure, Regional Transit Authority, and a series of other other things for different reasons and motivations, that when three executives get in a room to discuss it, the priorities of the shared body aren't necessarily always be incorporated. It needs to be incorporated. And surely it maybe in a perfect world, everyone would agree on all these things and we get one outcome. But I think it's the nuance. It's the nuance in governing, it's the nuance in policy making that certain things rank of a higher priority from the legislative branch, group of people who are closer to the folks in the front lines in our community. that doesn't get necessarily embedded in priorities that are advocated at an executive level or, another constitutional office level. What I found actually as a result of our a lobby firm that, a multi-client firm that can actually ramp up to help support our priorities on a regular basis. And it's not just working with legislators and make sure what our opinion is known. We don't weigh on all sorts of issues. When Oakland County comes down and starts weighing in on a legislative priority, it's risen to a level of importance that, frankly, in a bipartisan level. Frankly, we actively work not to send partisan resolutions to give direction because, frankly, it diffuses the effort. To speak with a united voice to move this thing forward actually does lend itself to more effectively leveraging and advancing our position and asking our legislative delegation, the House and the Senate, and hopefully the governor's office to respond. But it's also the day-to-day stuff. It's working with department heads. In fact, frankly, myself and a lot of our colleagues have leaned on our lobbyists to help open up those doors of relationship with the top, people who are part of the top administration that are governing everything from the health department. We talked about the child care fund, and we had a specific issue about, whether or not we could use dollars. We're required to use certain computer equipment, but we can't use the dollars to pay for the computer equipment that we're required to do to make the job more efficient. And so that type of, that's a nuanced thing. It's never going to make a headline in the paper, but in terms of governing, we were talking millions of dollars. And we opened up those conversations, continuing to work on that particular issue, but making progress in those type of things. And so it's probably been one of the things that I've found to be most useful into getting the attention of these ideas as we've looked through the appropriation process, leveraging our relationships to priorities that we've identified, or in some cases that as a board that we've decided to appropriate dollars and looking to encouraging the state to match us and to help support some of those priorities when it comes to serving and helping our most vulnerable. It's bore fruit in terms of our, I can add up in terms of the return on investment, the dollars it costs us annually, what we've been able to bring back, if you could monetize the policy side of things. But I'm just talking about the raw appropriations that are necessary to, help us do our job is more than paid for itself. And to be able to have someone that can help support the inquiry of individual constituents, and to be able to, and have a team of people that can be made available and very, very responsible. You can select the right person, or select the right team, but really incorporate it into the way that we move forward. The other thing that I have to give, credit to our chairman, that our legislative oversight committee really does speak with a united voice. As things come up, lame duck is coming. Some of us know, only bad things happen in lame duck. When no one's election's gone, hunting season's kicking off, only bad things happen. But there is going to be policy issues, regulatory changes. Most likely a supplemental at the end of the year coming through. To be able to move quickly and to be able to set up a process, a bipartisan process, to make sure that our priorities, we can move. We don't have to wait until the next meeting. That there's a way that we can respond quickly, as well as a more formal process to be proactive on trying to advance our priorities. And so having those things all together, I think it's actually worked well. I'm willing to admit that my opposition, I think, has shifted to support because I think it pays. It has served us well, has served our priorities, and frankly, some of the things that Mike listed off, but frankly, other things on the horizon, I think you're gonna, as a legislative body, never give up your authority, your power, and your influence. I think it's good government to have, to be an appropriate check to an executive authority, and to not have that type of access and relationship with policymakers that impact what you do every single day puts you at a disadvantage. And to claim your constitutional responsibilities and authority, I think it's important on behalf of the residents in this county, but for you to serve your own purposes. So,
maybe I can add one other thing, actually two other things, just from a point of experience. So I would say from my standpoint, there's additional benefits that might be a little bit softer, but at the end of the day, I think we pay roughly $60,000 or something like that for a full consulting contract. Our budget in total is $981 million. So it's a very small piece, right, from the Board of Commissioners standpoint. But there have been times when our lobbyists called me and said, hey, are you or is Oakland County aware of this particular bill that's likely to get traction and it's not going to help you? And I pick up the phone and call the executive's office and say to the deputy county executive, hey, I'm just wondering if you guys are aware. Most of the time they are, but I can tell you there's been a few times where they said, hey, no, we're not aware of anything like that. Let us get involved and let us work together, figure it out. That's number one. The other benefit I would say is we've been able to leverage our consultant to help us build relationships with department heads, but also legislators in Lansing. And that's important so they have a frame of reference when we're coming to ask for something. We have a pretty strong county executive, Brooks Patterson, many of you know. He's great. I love him. He does take strong positions on things from time to time, and some things that we support with him and some things we don't. It's good to know from a Lansing standpoint that there's additional faces in Oakland County, and that, yes, Brooks is the county executive and he speaks, but it takes 11 votes of the Board of Commissioners for any of that to become policy or to be appropriated. So it's been very helpful over the years to help us establish that mindset with the legislators and others in Lansing as well.
Okay, thank you. Before I open it up to commissioners, I'm going to turn it back over to Chair Smith.
Thanks. Thanks, guys. That was great, and I'm sure there's going to be a few questions out here. One of the concerns, and I've been talking with the executive's office about it, and probably just like when Oakland County started this, they're not overly excited about it, right? As a matter of fact, I had asked Marilyn Lane to show up. She was going to come today. She had something else to do, but she was going to listen to this, and we'll have some talks about it. But one of the comments was that we're going to have it's going to be a joke. Everybody knows that the executive runs the county, so when your lobbyist goes for something that's different than what the executive would want, and that's the big problem, obviously, right? I mean, if we're working together on things, or we agree on things, or we think that we would like to push something, the executive office doesn't really care one way or another. That's really not the general problem. The problem is when you have maybe two opposing points of view. So I guess if you wouldn't mind sharing, like how your lobbyist is, I guess, received when he comes up there on your benefit on something that maybe is on the other side of what the executive, and I know we've talked before. I don't see that happening on a regular basis, right? I would imagine in most cases, you guys are probably on the same side of most issues, just varying levels of where it fits on your priority list. But if you had a
I can talk to it unless you want to jump in. So I would say you're right. Probably 90+% of the time, we're on the same issue. So it's more collaborative, and it's more making sure that we're getting points of information from different places so we can triangulate it. Because prior to that, we only knew what we heard, right? And we were getting information secondhand. And I would say that I trust our county exec and our deputy county executives. I think they do a great job. But I can also say it's really nice to be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, look, this Injuent Defense Fund, I'm being told we're going to have to put $25 million in the budget. We don't have it, right? So we have to figure out where to get it from, and that it's really going to happen, and that there aren't going to be any changes to the plan. You're going to have to adopt it in whole. You can't adopt pieces. We're not going to get refunded for prosecutors. Is that true, right? Or can you go find out and just help me get my bearings so that I can triangulate what I'm being told with what is true, right? I'd say it's a lot of that. And the other thing I would say is I think our lobbyist is very well respected, whoever you choose. I mean, that's part of your vetting process. We went through a vetting process on firms, and we selected PAA and Jim Ryan. And he's very well known, and he's very well respected, I would say.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, to your first point, if you had a contrary position to the executive, does then the county look like fools? And I would say, no. The reality is, and today, the makeup of the board, tomorrow, the makeup of the board, the same as it relates to us. Mike brings up indigent defense. There's a policy issue, there's an appropriations issue, there's who pays for this issue. And they're all important. And I'll be honest that I would say, and this is, a little anecdotal, but our share, the belief from the board, this is important. We've got to be able to do this. I I don't know if I get the same from the executive's branch. I mean, I'll be honest, I'll speak for myself, and but we've got to figure out a way to do this. And so the information that Mike was talking about, being able to get to kind of like figure out how do you suss this out and work towards a plan, I think makes a lot of sense. I think, I mentioned this in some of my comments, it's not even necessarily that we're opposite of each other. It's a question of like whether it's a priority enough. And if it's not a high enough priority, some of the things that we've frankly been able to use our lobbyists to move forward, not because it was opposition to the executive office, it was they have other priority. They're focusing on a lot of other things. And so giving it the oomph to be able to move forward because it affects a certain area of our county and an important constituency that needs to have this issue addressed that might not raise up from a county-wide top priority of the executive office. That's important. I want to really underscore that because it's, I would say most of the things we advance, we haven't done so in the contrary to the executive. It's more, I would say, that we've given it a heightened priority importance because we were speaking with a voice. We were working the legislative challenge to be able to do it. We were able to get it done. Resources we've brought back and to help support food security issues is a result of us making a priority. Not that the executive was opposed to it.
It was neutral on it.
It was neutral, but as a result, frankly, they've been bringing our health department to kind of like intersect and work with it. So I get those. It's hard maybe to completely quantify that, but all of you, you guys are in government, you're the policymaker, you understand that, and which is why I think that there is value and utility, which I've found to appreciate and use on a regular basis to advance priorities for my local community that I represent, as well as working collectively as a board.
Thank you, Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mike, Dave, good to see both of you guys.
Too.
I was on this board before we changed to the executive form of government. We had a lobbyist, we had 26 commissioners, and I always felt that the lobbyist was never utilized to the potential of the firm. In some ways, it didn't seem like we were using our money very well because the lobbying firm was not directed well. They would come before a board of 26 commissioners. We would argue with each other. They would read the gong whir, and then no direction was given. So my question is, how do you guys in Oakland County direct your lobbyist? Does that committee that you mentioned, do they directly direct the lobbyist? Do they bring a resolution to the commission and then the commission votes on a resolution to direct the lobbyist? Who's in charge of telling the lobbyist what the priorities are?
I'll answer first, and then you can jump in. So three things. So some of it is, things that we're being proactive at, things that we're reacting to, and then things that come up along the way. And so, we have a standing committee on a monthly basis, keeping abreast about what's happening, progress of where things are going, very much driven by the priority of the members there. In fact, our lobbyists have put, in the beginning, we were like sitting there, you tell us, and he's like, what, you need to tell us. And so added some accountability in there, so there's that ongoing activity that's occurring. That committee can start a resolution, the full board can start a resolution, so in some cases that it does come outside that group and we have a process for deliberating that and then managed and maintained from the legislative ad hoc committee that's in place. And then lastly, on things that will pop up, lame duck being a classic example where, things are moving very fast. Essentially a government operations committee that, Mike leads to be able to respond and a requirement of shared bipartisan support to be able to do this without full action of the entire board. We can make sure that all points of views are brought into it. And so those are really the three mechanisms. But the accountability, you're absolutely right. If the expectations that our interests are going to be represented if we just have a lobbyist, no. You've got to ride that pony. And you've got to steer it and direct it and give it, and give them direction of what you want and then manage those things, manage that relationship, manage those things as they're happening.
So what percent of the direction that you provide your lobbying firm comes from sort of less official, just communication with the board, and, just sort of the relationship that's established between the lobbying from the board, and what percent might come from more formal direction from the board, where there's a resolution introduced that we direct the lobbyist of Oakland County to do X.
I mean, I would say it's split. I generate a lot of resolutions. So if it was me,
49.6 and 50.
yeah.
Of which 49.5 is Dave Woodward. But, no, I would say it's probably 50-50, 60-40. So two things. One, we don't have a recluse of any commissioner just runs a lobbyist and gets a request. You got to go through this committee. Okay, so we have a legislative committee, small group of commissioners. They're the ones that make the formal request to the lobbyist on behalf of the board, or I, as the chair, can do it. So number one, we have some governance there. Number two, I would say that, a lot of it is updating, keeping us aware, and then a number of it is us being proactive, and that shifted to Dave's point over time, right? We've gotten more engaged and gotten more our feet under how this works. The other thing I would say from accountability, I meet with the lobbyist directly once a month. I get these reports, and many of you are business people. I'm a business person, so I sit down and say, "Hey, Jim, tell me what you did for us, what you've done for us this month, what you're going to be doing for us next month. These 3 issues that we asked you about, where are they?" Right? And now before that meeting, I will have called some of the legislators that I know and say, "Hey, Jim Ryan been up there and talked to you about this? What's the status?" So I already know the answer before he gets there, but it's just the process of knowing that we're going to ask. And so to Dave's point, you can't just let it be a free-for-all. You got to give guidance. We do it through a structured governance with the committee as well as myself, and then it's those checkpoints of accountability. And when Jim comes to the committee meetings, he starts with, "Here are the things you've been asking me about. Here's a progress report."
I give a very concrete example of late. And so, as a county, we've been looking at septic inspection for water quality things. There has been activity at the state level, how that may or may not impact our local community. And so there we actually had a working group working on this, leverage the lobbyists to get the information. It's possible, there's a possibility during lame duck that's something that actually might move that will directly impact Oakland and Macomb more than almost any other county in the state. And how are we part of that conversation, and what do we want to do? And so it's, I think I bring that up as one of the most recent activities in which we had, policymaking folks working with our county health department, monitoring what's happening, monitoring what it does and how it would impact, what's the financial burden that would be borne by us and or our residents, and working towards hopefully crafting something that everyone can be involved in. And I think it's becoming a better product. That whether it will get all the way, people are intersecting into the topic from lots of different vantage points, but with a genuine commitment trying to figure out how to get something done.
Thank you both. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I don't have a question. I'm just going to make a brief comment and then move on to the next speaker. Our current lobbyist that is hired by the county executive, I think we get a report every quarter, and a lot of legislation moves in and moves out in between those quarters, and that's a concern. The other thing is he also has a legislative liaison, and we don't have that. So if we have a lobbyist that can either shoot an email out to all of us or shoot one out to Bob, depending on the circumstance, and he shoots one out, and we can get on the phone to our legislators that we all know personally, we have the ability to have an impact, because we don't have an employee that we have hired for that purpose. So, and I heard all the arguments about why this wouldn't be a good thing, but I think that there may be a little confusion as to what our intent was and what we might be trying to do. Particularly, though, when it moves fast and furious, which unfortunately anymore isn't just lame duck. I've seen things just move in 2 days. It's been absolutely shocking to see what's going on. I think that we need the ability, and the other thing is, Macomb County's not having the punch that we should in Lansing. We are a big county. We should be having a punch in Lansing, and we should have the county exec's office leaning on people. We should be leaning on people because a whole lot of things are coming and going that have an effect on us, and we're not even aware of it sometimes until a couple of months later. And just from listening to the reports that I get from the lobbyists from MAC, a lot of things that are covered there are not covered by the lobbyists here, and a lot of things he covered might not be covered by them. Hopefully, if we're hearing from enough voices, we kind of get the full picture as to what's going on in Lansing. Anyway, that's all I have, Commissioner Kraft, because I do want to move this on. Well, Kathy already had to leave. I know there's some people that have some things to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quick question for you guys. I know you started talking about the process. This is a big deal for me. I'm a staffer in Lansing, and I bring this up because I know for a fact that there were some issues that came up, some bills, and the executive's office was calling state reps' offices after the bill had already been passed. So with you guys, you set your priorities and things like that. What happens next? What's the notification process? Are you guys told when a bill is introduced, when it's sitting in committee, when it makes it out of committee? How are you guys notified of, if it's your priorities, or even if a bill is introduced that wasn't a priority of yours but directly affects counties? How does that work for you guys?
So I can speak as someone who serves on the committee that our lobbyist directly reports to, and all the members of the committee, and I imagine, and the chair is also copied in it, that if there's something that, and I forgot to mention this, that there are things that might not be our top priority, but we flag as we want to know the progress of this, and we are prepared to weigh in if this moves. We make a judgment like, I don't know if they're going to be able to successfully take all our regional economic development money and build a ski ramp up in the UP. But if they were, we would want to engage. And so, our lobbyist responds really quickly as this thing's happening. And so, they comb over all the committees that generally county-related stuff or things that will touch us, and will give us an update. And top of the morning, like this just got put on the agenda, looking for direction. What should we do? So it's very proactive in that sense. And then we go into action. So I think it depends on the particular type of thing, but if something's moving that fast, we get notified. Sometimes, if no one's responded, phone calls start, blowing up. I know that he calls you and myself pretty frequently, and then we react accordingly based on what the circumstances. But I don't think we've ever missed a committee meeting or a vote, to my knowledge. I can't remember that.
Yeah, so I would break it down into informal and formal, right? So formal is through the committee, the bill introduction process. They're scanning that in Lansing, trying to figure out, is it in line with something that we want, or is it something that we're not even aware of, but Jim's gotten to know us well enough to say, hey, this could have an impact on Oakland County. You guys should at least have a heads up on that. So that's kind of the formal process. The informal is with him just being on the ground up there. He'll call me and say, hey, look, nothing's really formalized on how this is going to move. But my gut tells me this bill's going to start going pretty quick. And the way I understand it's going to happen is X, Y, and Z. So at that point in time, I'll call the county executive's office and say, hey, you may already be aware, but here's what I'm hearing, and we need to make sure that we're all on this together. Otherwise, it's going to be bad for us. So more informal and formal processes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And one other thing that it reminded me, and Commissioner, the comment that you brought up, that in the beginning maybe that there was concern about us having our own lobbyists or what have you.
I would say there's definitely concern.
But that the executive actually has come to us to actually adopt resolutions to help advance and support positions that they've taken to empower our lobbyists to join a line with some of their stuff. So it has evolved into a relationship to be a partnership more than an adversarial relationship.
Okay, Okay. Commissioner Leonetti is the last speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you guys. Thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation, especially Dave. Bob, we're going to do this for 2 months to see what's going on in the lame duck session. We got to make a decision if we want to have one, I guess, into next year. So I really appreciate your perspective of sort of being on the fence on.
I was on the fence. My first vote was no.
So I do have one question. Do you guys? And these are going to be questions that they're so abstract you might not be able to answer, but this one you should be able to. Do you guys have in Oakland County, do you have a grant department, like a department down over there that like specializes in trying to get grants at all? No, not at all. Okay.
We actually, the executive office used to have some people more dedicated to that. I think during the recession, that those positions, that kind of that role went away.
Right.
And so when it came to opportunities, I mean, we've actually leveraged on our lobbyists to secure, state appropriations to help actually support some of these.
Yeah, I guess that's my question. It comes down to this, like, from cost-benefit analysis, from a return on investment, would it be better if we had a lobbyist, or would it be better if we put our money into having somebody be, from the commission, a grant writer, a person that looks for grants and says, look, let's get grants over here to our departments. And so, I'm trying to best use the county's money in the most efficient way. I see grants as being a better way, but maybe a lobbyist is sort of like a person that can help get grants. So what's your thoughts on that, gentlemen?
I can give you my perspective.
Sure.
I think it comes from this standpoint. Everybody loves grants. We always say, get grants, free money, right? We want a lot of free money, per se. So we always like grants. But to me, grants is a little bit of being on the offense. And so you might get a $100,000 grant or a $500,000 grant or $1 million grant, and that's great, right? But one bad bill in Lansing goes sideways. The Indigent Defense Fund, we're not aware of it, county exec, it's millions. And so for us, again, I think we're paying roughly $60,000 a year. And all in my mind is that we have to prevent one bad bill happening that would cost us more than that. And then we just keep pushing the departments to drive grant efforts to get the free money. So that's how we're doing it.
And I'd pretty much agree. I mean, I think unless you're talking about the Ford Foundation or some of these other, the Healthy Michigan Fund and things like that. If you're talking about like state grants, I actually think that and again, this is, I want to again underscore, this point that people around this, on this board, staff on this board, getting connected to administrators of departments that will oversee, the development of those grant programs and what those look like, has a lot of utility to be able to be in a best position to get them. And so if it was a choice, one or the other, I think, frankly, the lobbyist is going to open up the doors of relationships probably better than hiring someone to just be sitting there waiting for something that's prescribed that may or may not nicely fit with what the priorities that you're looking for, and then be constrained on the limitations of what it is. And so I probably lean towards the former. If we're talking just specifically like state.
Well, I don't think we need to decide between one or the other.
No, I just wanted their perspective. I wanted your perspective, and I appreciate it. And it was very helpful because that's what I wanted to know is grants or a lobbyist. You know what I mean? And so I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Duje.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much for being here. Frankly, I think the lobbyist business started up on one or two items that came up in Lansing the last time around. My understanding was this was before us to explain away the end of the year rat race, if you will. You gentlemen know what goes on in Lansing. The problem is Lansing doesn't know what's going on in Lansing. That being said, I'm not a big proponent of lobbyists. I think lobbyists are created to help people get jobs after term limits. Bottom line. So you guys are doing a great job. You ought to go to a lobbyist firm for a job.
No, thank you.
You'd probably make a lot more money. But that being said, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the perspective.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'd vote no against it today, and I'd vote no against it next week. I'm not going to spend money I don't have on something that is dubious as far as results. So we'll take it from there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Drillette, there are people packing up over here, so I'm just going to briefly, and if you answer him, the answer should be yes, no, I don't know.
Got it.
And pretty close to that. You're going to withdraw? Okay, because I'm getting, people are throwing paper balls at me over here. So, okay, I'm going to let Chair Smith close it. I want to thank both of you for taking your time to come in. This was not something you needed needed to do, and we really appreciate it. And I really like the idea of us building a good relationship with your commission. I think we have a lot in common. Thank you. Go ahead, Chair Smith.
And I just want to, same thing, I want to
Mike's
thank you
hosting
guys.
next time.
Yeah, yeah, we'll come
You have
over
to
there.
come to
I tell
Lake
you.
Orion, but you know, it's where living is a vacation.
Yeah. For everybody's perspective, this was an exercise in seeing what happens outside of our county and some of the things that were kind of put into us, you know, look over here, this is what you guys should be doing. Well, we should look a little broader. We're a very large county that has a commission that should be doing some legislative things other than just approving a budget. I hear it all over that county commissions do things like this all over the place and do more legislating than we do. Now, we don't have to do it. We can do what we do, but this is just I'm going to try to bring in more things like this just to kind of get a glimpse of what's out there that we could be doing if we choose to do it. And that's really where we are as a board. We choose to do it or we choose not to do it. And you mentioned it was a growing period. At first, it was more gathering information until you started putting your foot in, and then you realized that there were things that you needed to lobby for. And I would see the same thing here if we did something. It would be more informational, and with more former legislators being on board, it might be a little easier for them to say, this is what we should be looking at, and this is how we should do it. But once again, that's why we have a democracy here. So we will say again, thank you for coming. And I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And
Anytime.
gentlemen, hopefully we'll see you at another event soon. I know we've been talking about the Tri-County the summit, getting that back together again. So hopefully we'll do that soon.
Sounds great.
All right.
Thanks
Thanks,
for having
Mike.
us.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. Okay, we have.
What?
All right. We have a receive and file, correct? Please vote.
Don't work for anybody.
Andre, probably vote no to receive and file. I do not want to receive this or file.
Okay, that motion passes 11-0. New business, does anybody have any new business?
Just real quick, this is on your desk. This is the BOC briefs that's going to start going out. We're still just we're going to put this together. It's going to go out every Wednesday to all of our people out there. This is one of the things Courtney's been developing. Feel free to, and at any time, work with her on things that you would want to see in this brief to get out to the community. So this has not been out yet. It's just passed out to you to kind of get the general ideas. We're going to still tweak a few things on this and then get it moving in the next week or so. So, thanks. It's going to go on the website, and there's a bunch of people that actually we have emails for that like, for some reason, getting our emails in Facebook.
Make a suggestion at that time, so we put our entire board on the front page instead of Mr. Smith alone.
We can put however we want to put on this.
Maybe that would be justifiable, we'll put the board on.
But I think we're going to have individual things for your communities too, so we'll talk about that.
Okay, thank you. And I have one thing I think you guys need to know. I know that the animal control contract with East Point has not gone through yet. And I will tell you because I'm hearing it from residents as well as members from city council. Residents are saying if they call the county because they need help, because right now East Point doesn't have an animal control officer, they're told, I'm sorry, we can't help you because we don't have a contract. But other entities, and my understanding is maybe even one who has animal control, if they call, the county is responding. And I know that council members are being inundated from residents that are experiencing the same thing. I don't know where it's going. I know that there is a lot of animosity over the fact that there's a different sort of treatment. Now, whether or not they pay for a full-time officer or they don't even have a full-time officer, I think the way things stand right now are not whatever's going to eventually be negotiated, if anything at all does. Because I'm hearing a lot of anger on this. Just letting you guys know that is not settled and that may affect the budget and where we go in the future.
How about having animal control officer and Dazzle come before us, I'd like to have to answer that.
Well, I think,
Pay county taxes?
yes, but I think before that happens,
I don't want to mix apples and oranges, and I'm not an attorney, and I'm not well versed on this. But there is different rules for municipalities if you are a city.
oh no,
Or a township, and how that's incorporated in their language. Cities are responsible themselves, not the county. So I can't comment.
You would be correct if there weren't several cities already receiving the service for free.
Some cities pay for it. Some cities have, like, I believe Spring Heights has their own. Some communities have their own. Some contract with the county. So before we get into a debate over that,
I'm not debating anything. What you missed is he said there are cities that aren't paying, that they're providing it to for free, and they're asking East Point and Roseville and St. Clair Shores to pay for things that they are providing to other cities for free, not necessarily townships. And by the way, there's a lot of reading of all the laws with respect to this going on down there. And I don't think with respect to animal control, the distinction has anything to do with cities and townships. But I don't want to jump into this, Joe, because I want to let the cities continue to talk to the county exec's office and animal control over this. But it is a budgetary issue. I'm just letting you guys know because that is in the budget and that hasn't been settled. Okay, anybody else? Oh, Commissioner Slager, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm listening to the radio this morning, about 9 o'clock. I get up that early. And all I hear is another sinkhole in Macomb County. And it made me so damn mad when I heard that. And then they come back and they say it's a water main break. There's a big difference between a sinkhole and a water main break. And I wish we somehow would send a letter to WWJ and tell them what the heck you're raising the people's expectation of another major catastrophe. And it was just a water main. I hope I wasn't the only one that heard it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and anybody else? Okay, so with that, public participation, seeing none, we'll close public participation. Motion to adjourn by Drillette, supported by Leonetti. Please vote.
See you tomorrow.